we have Maya TERRO, who is the co-founder and executive director for Food Blast. She describes herself as a hunger hero fighting hunger and food waste. She's always considered herself to be a social and political and environmental activist. And at a young age, she saw a great opportunity to address hunger and climate change by using food waste. And she holds an MA in public health and co-founded Food Blast, which is a great initiative aiming to eliminate hunger and making food accessible to those who need it the most. You've been an advocate for decreasing food waste, and we want to know how your organization has responded to this pandemic, COVID-19, and how it can contribute even more post-recovery.
So, as an advocate of both food rescue and hunger relief, as we know, food security is strongly associated with hunger and poverty, both of which are highly prevalent in Lebanon. And it's considered a global health problem with long adverse consequences on health. Much like everywhere in the world, the pandemic has impacted global food systems. It has disrupted regional agricultural value chains and posed risks to household food securities. This meant an increase in food prices, the lack of access to food for some, or the unavailability of food for others. In Lebanon, prior to the corona pandemic, Lebanon was already going through political unrest with an unprecedented economic meltdown on the way, all of which has posed a big threat to the middle income class, which was able to stand in the face of these atrocities before, but with the pandemic, it has now unfortunately joined the lower income class, which already was in a bad place to start with. So the folks in this class, the ones that can be found way under the poverty line, are now considered severely food insecure and as a result are facing extreme hunger. With one of the worst economic breakdowns in the history of Lebanon and with more mouths to feed, it was only natural for the work we do in hunger relief to increase considerably. And while the rest of the world was social distancing themselves at their homes, we at Food Blast have been working tirelessly to provide food assistance packages with basic food commodities to folks in need across Lebanon. Since October, our nationwide hunger relief campaign called Beat Hunger LB has almost doubled the amount of food boxes we pack and deliver. Nowadays, we pack and deliver anywhere between 800 and 1,000 food assistance packages on a monthly basis. In terms of food waste, with the majority of social events on hold and restaurants only catering to their customers via delivery apps, the amount of cooked food we usually rescue has subsequently come to a halt as well. Food close to expiry and unsold fruits and veggies, though, are still being rescued on a weekly basis, although the amounts have somehow increased, given that the purchasing power of many Lebanese households has plummeted significantly, resulting in more food items being unsold. I believe that Food Blast has a huge role to play in the road to recovery, especially when and as long as the Lebanese government is failing its citizens time and time again by depriving them, especially the destitute, of one of their most basic human rights, the right to food.
How were you able to leverage partnerships, and what kind of partners were really helpful to you through this crisis? And, how much can we depend on partnerships in a post-recovery?
Well, being the community-based and volunteer-driven organizations we are, since its establishment, Food Blast has relied heavily on community members in anything it used to need. So while previously we relied heavily on a mix of in-kind and donations, with the majority of our in-kind donations being the food items that we used to usually collect by hosting food drives in collaboration with schools and businesses and scouts and universities, etc. We used to ask them to donate to our food boxes, the food items we usually need. With the pandemic, all of this has changed. Nowadays, we rely purely on monetary donations for two main reasons, these being safety and affordability. By purchasing and packing the food items using the money we raise from our individual donors, we ensure that what goes in each food parcel is safe, We also make sure to max out the money value of the donations we receive by buying in bulks from the wholesalers, which saves us a lot of time and a lot of money versus if our donors were to buy the stuff themselves at the market price, which is crazy high in comparison. In terms of partnerships, Foodless has always relied on individual donors. We don't have huge major companies donating to our cause because we believe that being community-based, community members can play a huge role, and it's not always money. We also rely heavily on volunteers because everyone in Foodless is a volunteer. We have zero staff. And a huge load of our hunger relief and food rescue work entails working with local community members, as mentioned earlier. These have included schools, scouts, universities, but also, and more so now, with the pandemic, we have always worked with diverse array of local NGOs that cater to different vulnerable communities. And now these vulnerable communities have been severely hit by the pandemic. So other than working with NGOs that focus on hunger relief, we are realizing that now more NGOs are reaching out to us, and these NGOs work with drug addicts, people with physical needs, the elderly, abused kids, and even the LGBTQ community, among others. We also have always partnered with a small and select group of socially driven companies and brands, which have been, for example, like Zata Rosette or Prill, for instance, who have been of immense help to the work we do in terms of hunger relief. And lastly, our work has always entailed working with local municipalities, which has seen a huge rise after many municipalities, especially those in rural areas, and are usually left behind, have been reaching out to us to help them provide food parcels for the most at need in their communities.
Also, I want to ask you about, from your perspective, from your experience in the NGO field, working with people in very poor areas, with youth also in terms of community development, what kind of future do you see for our youth in this region? And what do they need to capitalize on?
So I've been volunteering from a very young age, almost 14. I have always believed that one has to be the change they want to see happen around them. And so it comes to as no surprise that the future I hope for Lebanon and the world as a whole is one where each one of us takes responsibility of the choices they make on a daily basis, especially the youth, since they will be leading the way in the future. So be it social or responsibility, we need to take things to our own hands, especially when the Lebanese government, for example, has failed us time and time again. The post-COVID future that I want to see is really no different than the one I have been working so hard to realize for the past 10 years or so. I hope really that more of us, especially the young generation, will start contemplating the implications of their daily habits, and by doing so, will realize the need to make more mindful decisions in their day-to-day lives. Take food, for instance, because that's my everyday thing. Foodless has been working really hard to make people realize that the type of food we buy, the way we cook and consume it, why and how we discard it, all of this and more not only affects us, the consumers, but also the planet and those living in it. It is unacceptable for hunger and food waste to exist simultaneously. It just makes no sense at all, not economically, not socially, not environmentally, and most of all, especially not morally. We all have a role to play. And on this note, I want to wholeheartedly thank each and every single person who donated their time, effort, skills, and money towards Foodless cause. As always, we say and believe every little bit goes a long way, and the right time to start is now.
If you want to summarize everything you said in like 3 pieces of advice, 2 or 3 pieces of advice, what would they be?
Advice is something I've always told myself, and most of the Lebanese youth are really hopeless. So I usually say, do what you can where you are with what you have. So don't let anyone or anything limit you, because sometimes when you have the idea to create change, a lot of people will be against you, and it will make you feel like you're doing something wrong. It's usually the opposite, because those who are really consider crazy are the ones who eventually end up changing the world. So always believe in yourself, because that's the hardest thing, to be yourself when everyone else is asking you to be someone else. And just don't procrastinate. Start where you are with what you have and learn as you go.